Hello everyone, and welcome back. Red Alert 3 is a very serious, very historically accurate RTS about an alternate timeline version of World War III created by time-traveling Soviets killing Einstein with a handshake. I first played this game when I was like 8 or 9, and every few years I come back and play it again and still have a blast with it, though my strategy really hasn't evolved ever since I was a kid. That got me thinking, what if I tried to beat the game using only my least used unit type, Infantry? Can you beat Command & Conquer Red Alert 3 with Infantry only? Here's the rules. Number 1, we're not allowed to use or produce any units other than from each army's barracks equivalent, with 3 exceptions. Resource collection vehicles, transports, and MCVs and other base creation vehicles will all be allowed. Most of the time these vehicles have no or very limited weaponry, but I'll still try and keep them out of any direct fights so that they don't impact the outcome. Number 2, if we're given or need to produce any vehicles to complete a mandatory objective, we can use them, but only until we have access to an infantry unit to replace it, at which point the vehicle must be destroyed. Number 3, this isn't any difficulty challenge. I'm going to be playing on hard for as long as I can, but if I'm struggling, I reserve the right to lower it to normal, since that would be my go-to difficulty anyway. There are 3 different campaigns in this game for the 3 different armies, sharing some story beats between them, but for the most part, these are all their own thing. I'm going to play through all of these eventually, but for this video, I'm just going to focus on the first one, the Soviets. So let's get into it. Can you beat Red Alert 3, Infantry only? We're put into the role of the new Soviet commander, meeting our leader, Premier as he watches the game's trailer. For our first mission, we're being sent to protect Leningrad from a surprise attack by the ultra-high-tech Japanese army, the Empire of the Rising Sun. We also meet one General Krukov, who seems to take some personal issue with us and disapproves of our mission, thinking that the resources would be better spent elsewhere. Despite his objections, the mission still goes ahead. Our forces are very limited at the start, only having access to the Soviet commando, Natasha. She's equipped with a sniper which will make short work of any infantry before they even know that she's there. She can also use a laser to target vehicles and structures to call down an airstrike on them, which we can use to break down part of the wall to get into the Leningrad castle grounds, which we'll have to protect for this mission. Use Natasha to clear out all of the enemies around the castle, including the 2 soldiers waiting to ambush her. With all of them cleared out, we're introduced to our co-commander for this mission, Oleg. We have a co-commander for each mission who will help us out around the place. We don't have any direct control over their army, but we do share resources and a common goal. Don't forget though that this is still our show. We're the ones in charge, Oleg. We also get access to a barracks, which is how we'll be training troops. Our army is going to be pretty much exclusively made up of units we're able to produce from this building, so get used to these faces. For now, we only have access to one unit, flak troopers. These are prisoners sent to the front lines armed with a heavy flak cannon which makes them great at taking out vehicles, especially aircraft. The game wants us to make 5 of these dudes, but I would just mass produce as many as you can, as most of what we're going to be dealing with in this mission are tanks. We do get access to another unit type later, but I wouldn't really bother with any of them in this mission. After a while, another attack will begin. You can pretty much focus on just defending the gate nearest to your base, as your allies should be able to handle the rest of them, though don't be afraid to help out if they start to struggle. Make sure to also keep your forces away back from the gate itself so that they don't get crushed by any of the tanks that pour in. With the attack repelled, we have a little downtime, and it's here that we're given a bonus objective, to save the Hermitage Museum that's currently under attack. Thing is, it's across the water, and none of our army other than Natasha can actually swim. The game comes in clutch though, and gives us a bullfrog, the main Soviet transport. This thing can travel across land and sea, and even launch soldiers out, making them able to get to otherwise inaccessible areas. Now, I did say that transports would be allowed in this run, however, in this case, I'm not going to use it since the objective we need this for isn't required to beat the mission. The Bullfrog also has some shabby anti-air guns, so to prevent this filthy metal monster from having any impact on the course of the battle, you can select your forces, then click on this little icon in the bottom right, then click on the Bullfrog to have them friendly fire it to smithereens. After a little wait, the Empire makes one final push for the castle, this time bringing some long-range warships to pummel it from a distance. As I mentioned, the only soldier we have that can swim is Natasha, so she's going to have to head into the water and deal with these herself. Between our co-commander and the soldiers we left, the castle should be fine, so focus on Natasha as she makes her way around, taking out ship after ship. Soon we'll get access to our first commander ability. As you play, you'll slowly fill up this ring in the bottom left, and once complete you can purchase a new special ability. These range in usefulness from pretty damn good to literally just spawning 5 guys. Really slowly. The only one we can use right now is the magnetic satellite, which lets us suck up anything made of metal, making this a great way to get rid of problematic enemy armor. It's a little late in this mission for it to be useful, but we can at least deploy it on one of the battleship pairs to speed things up a bit. Once Natasha takes out the last of the ships, the Empire will retreat and Leningrad Castle will be well, at least it's still standing. We're congratulated for our defense of Leningrad by the intelligence officer Dasher before quickly being chewed out by General Krukov. Apparently, while we were defending Leningrad, the Empire was moving deeper into the motherland, and for some reason he blames us for this, but wasn't it your job to hold them back while we were defending Lenin? Anyway, we're now being sent to try and head off the invasion at Krasna 45, an old launch facility we might be able to turn against them. We start this mission out with just 3 units, a group of sickles. These things can absolutely mow down infantry, but they're definitely not infantry themselves. Now, technically, since these are the only troops we have access to right now, according to the rules we can use them until we get access to something else. But why would we sully our hands with the technicality when we have a perfectly good co-commander who we can make do all the work for us instead? Like I said before, we're the ones in charge here, and despite not being able to order their troops around, we can order them to order their troops around. We can get them to move to specific locations, attack targets, and so on. It's a lot more rudimentary than the control we have over our own forces, but this does essentially give us command over our allies' army. Our co-commander this time is Nikolai, and he only has 1 soldier for now, that being Natasha. Have him move her up to this intersection and she should start sniping Rising Sun soldiers one by one. Eventually they will realise that their numbers are dropping, but they decide to charge at her with their laser katanas instead of just shooting her, giving her plenty of time to dispatch them. She should then start taking out the row of enemies further back, who do remember how guns work and actually start shooting her, but even though she'll take some damage here, she should survive just fine. With these enemies dispatched, part of the forward assault team that was captured is freed and joins us, specifically a group of war bears. These things are cool, but honestly kind of useless. They kind of act like scouts, being able to cross land and sea very quickly and sniff out any disguised enemies, but they're only really able to take on infantry, and even then, since they have no weapons, they have to get in close enough to attack with their bare hands. Or paws, I believe they're called. They can, however, let out a roar to stun any nearby infantry, which will come in kind of handy. If we send them down here, we can see a group of enemies attacking something, so use your bears to take them out. Make sure to roar to stun them all when close enough, as you don't want to lose too many of your units when we already have so few. Turns out what they were attacking was a group of Tesla troopers, heavy infantry equipped with Tesla cannons that are slow firing but can absolutely destroy anything they touch. We can free another pair of them up here, increasing our forces even more. Even with these guys though, I wouldn't risk taking on any enemies directly, especially not these mecha tengus that drop out of the sky. Instead, use a bear to get just close enough for them to drop down out of the sky, then deploy the magnetic satellite to scoop up as many as you can. If there are any left, tell your co-commander to send in Natasha just close enough to be able to attack them without getting into their aggro range. Continue keeping your forces out of harm's way by combining Natasha and the magnetic satellite to eliminate the enemies all the way up until the launch pad. Once our forces get close enough, the rocket will launch, giving us access to a new commander ability, the orbital drop. This basically lets us drop a load of space trash onto our enemies. What's really cool is that anything we've sucked up with the magnetic satellite also gets added to the deluge, which I'm pretty sure makes it stronger. Unfortunately, it turns out the Empire was planning an ambush for us. We can use the orbital drop to do some pretty good damage, but outside of that, we can't really do much with our forces so small. Lucky Natasha's here. Thanks to her superior range, she can take out most of the enemy forces before they even know she's there. Our co-commander is really carrying us in this mission, to be honest. I even lost all of my troops thanks to some pretty poor plays on my part, but thanks to Nikolai and Natasha, we still came out victorious. They really deserve all the credit here. We're commended by the Premier for our amazing, skillful, and single-handed defeat of the Empire at Krasna 45. Due to our display of skill, Premier Judenko decides to put us in charge of retaking a port captured by the Empire to help us get our navy back into fighting shape. Of course, General Krukov disagrees, calling us inexperienced, but the Premier has our back, so off we go. Our first goal is to destroy the enemy base on this island and set up our own. We start this mission off with 3 bullfrogs stacked to the brim with units. We don't really have any other choice than to use these things to launch our troops onto the island to start clearing it out. You'll want to launch them out around about here, not too far back, or the jet thing will transform and start taking them out while they're still parachuting and unable to defend themselves. They can also be attacked by ground forces once they get low enough, so a lot of your troops will likely be gone before they even get a chance to fight back. With whatever survived, you want to immediately start clearing out the enemy force here before they get taken out too. Once all immediate threats are gone, you'll want to next destroy the generators. Without the power that these things produce, the base defenses will go offline, which means one less thing for us to worry about. Do be aware that when you destroy a building, a single soldier will appear, so you'll have to take them out as well. Our ally will handle clearing out the bottom half of the island, so we're just going to have to take out the remaining forces to the north, including the 2 prospectors, as they have the ability to switch to a very basic anti-infantry turret for self-defense. Finally, with whatever remains, take out the ore refineries. Around this point, you'll receive reinforcements in the form of these stingrays. These are amphibious vehicles equipped with heavy Tesla cannons. These are quite useful in this mission, but obviously we can't use them, so for now just put them off to the side. A group of Imperial armor also shows up on the island, so we have to take that out as well. It's a good thing that there's no restrictions on our co-commander using tanks, as without the stingrays that they got, I don't think that our forces could have handled this alone. In fact, after this battle, I was left with just 1 conscript who was very near to death. No idea how he managed to survive all this, but mad respect. Oh yeah, I completely forgot to mention conscripts. These are the Soviets' most basic infantry, armed with an AK-47, making them good at taking out infantry and not much else, though they can switch to a Molotov cocktail, which makes them much better at taking on armor and great with garrison buildings. Once the island is clear, we can start building our very own base. Unpack your main base around about here. First, you'll want to make a reactor, as you can't make much without power. You'll want to start with 2 of these, but by the end I'd probably upgrade to 4. Next, some ore refineries. You can place these anywhere, but you'll want to just place them in front of the 2 ore mines where indicated. Next up is a barracks. We won't actually be using this much here, but we still need to build it to complete the objective. Once it's made, train like 10 flak troopers and have them destroy the stingray that the game gave us earlier. Lastly, we need to make a naval yard. Since we can't use most of the things that this building produces, once we've built it for the mission, I just sell it. We also have a bonus objective to build some base defenses. You'll want a good amount of both anti-air and anti-ground spread around the place, but don't go too crazy too quickly or you'll run out of power and all of the defenses you build will shut off. Once done, the battlefield will expand and we'll be given more Rising Sun bases to destroy. Some of these will be a bit of a problem, namely these 2, as they can't actually be targeted by land. We'll have to rely on our co-commander, Dasha, to take care of these, as she's the only one who can make a navy to reach them. Before they get on with that though, send them up to about here. There's a little resistance, but nothing that their stingrays shouldn't be able to handle, and once these 2 soldiers are dealt with, we'll free a pair of combat engineers. The combat in these guys' name is a little misleading since they aren't too tasty in a fight, but they are far from useless. They're able to enter different types of buildings for various different effects. Most interestingly, by entering enemy buildings we can start using them for ourselves. Have your engineer enter the abandoned barracks to get it operational and start building a large group of mostly flak troopers as well as 3 engineers. Have the flak troopers destroy the nearby turret. You can also destroy the Imperial generators, but I personally used engineers to steal them for myself. I also used an engineer to take the Imperial barracks, which actually lets us start training their soldiers for ourselves. Now you'll want to increase your forces, mainly focusing on flak troopers from the Soviet barracks and Imperial warriors from the Rising Sun barracks just to speed up the process. Once you're happy with your amassed force, slowly start making your way around the land here, taking out Rising Sun that gets in your way. My original plan was to get them to around about here to take out the Empire's base, but apparently they can't actually reach this area, so instead, once everything was clear, I used the friendly fire command to have them start attacking this building. Destroying this building is actually the last objective of the mission, and we usually can't even attack it until all of the other bases have been destroyed, but doing it this way we can trigger it early. After we do a bit of damage, a force field will be erected and enemy reinforcements will appear, so switch your attacks to them and wait for the force field to deactivate before returning to attacking the building. Destroying this early unfortunately doesn't trigger the end of the mission, we still have to take out the remaining bases. To get to this one, we're going to need to use those bullfrogs we had at the start since apparently we can't get to the area on foot. I'd recommend sending about 10 flak troopers and 5 conscripts over. Make sure to stay away from the naval base here as we don't want to lose any of our bullfrogs. While we're here we can take out these generators to disable some of the turrets, making it easier for our ally to take out the naval base I mentioned before, but our main objective here is this building. Once the last building falls, the port is once again ours, and it's just in time too, as it looks like our old enemy, the Allies, are starting to rebuild thanks to increased support from the new US president. This could of course prove pretty problematic, so we're being sent in to deal some serious damage to the Allies before they get a chance to get on their feet again. General Krukov will even be joining us, which might give the 2 of us a chance to bond a little, though apparently he won't be joining us until later, so we have to start off without him. We start the mission out with the base on the water, which is a bit of a problem as we have to build a barracks on solid ground. Luckily, our ally has a base over here on the shore, and we can actually build structures near our ally's base as well, so place barracks down close to the back around about here and start producing a load of flak troopers and conscripts. I also brought the 2 stingrays I started with up onto the shore and of course had my soldiers send them to a farm upstate. You can also pack up your construction yard and move it to the shore as well, but you'll still have to defend the power plants and refineries on the water anyway, so I just left it here. As for defense, don't worry about any anti-air this time and just build a bunch of sentry guns and the new Tesla coils. With enough of these, enemies won't be able to do much at all, but they'll slowly take damage, so be sure to use the repair ability if they ever start looking too worse for wear. A little ways in, these aircraft carriers will appear, and they can be pretty devastating thanks to their insane range, and we don't really have a good defense against them, other than the magnetic satellite. Thankfully though, for whatever reason, the Allies don't really lean heavily into these. We're also gifted these 4 Akula subs, but obviously these aren't infantry, so just have them kill each other, and if one survives, just leave it alone and eventually some stray enemy will take it out. Honestly, I don't really have much to say for this mission. I kinda just build up a big force and slowly eat away at the enemy's positions. If you make any conscripts, you'll want to switch them over to Molotovs whenever they're not in fights with infantry. As you clear out the area, you should also do the bonus objective of capturing the banks to help afford to reinforce your troops if they get a bit low. The allied bases here do also have a habit of clustering their generators together, making them great targets for an orbital dump, which really helps as the base defenses can be a real pain to work around while powered on. Once all of the targets are destroyed, the general finally shows up. A little late, but hey, pleasure to be working with you.
Are you planning on fighting the enemy, Commander? Or are you just going to hide in your base?
Oh, seriously dude, come on, just get lost. We now have one more base to take out, only this time we have to deal with the general occasionally chiming in to tell us what a bad job we're doing as we do all the work. He also steals a bunch of our banks we captured, so our finances will now increase much slower. We do at least get access to a pair of V2 rocket launchers, which can demolish enemy bases from a long way away and are very useful in this mission. So have them destroyed and continue to bulk up your infantry. The strategy here is the same as before, try and take out the power plants with orbital dumps to lower the defenses and sweep in your infantry to clear out the forces and finally take out the structures. Once everything's destroyed, victory is declared. Honestly, this one was a lot easier than I expected. General Krukov of course tries to claim that it was him who saved the day and we were more of a hindrance than a help, but regardless, the Premier is still impressed enough to task us with a very important mission. The Allies are working on an extremely powerful super weapon which could turn the tide in their favour. We obviously can't have that, so it's our job to steal their research. Before he can finish giving us a pep talk though, a helicopter appears at the Premier's window and fires at him, causing the signal to cut out. While we wait for more information on what the hell just happened, our mission begins. The first goal here is to take out the enemy bases on these islands and plant our own down. This is the first mission that we have access to aircraft for. My usual strategy for the rest of the Soviet campaign would be to just power build these twin-blade helicopters now that we have access to them. Most of the time, enemies struggle to look up, so in big enough numbers, not much can really stand up to these things. Without them, we're going to have to get a bit more creative. At the start of the mission, I'd recommend packing up your construction yard and moving it over near to your co-commander's base to benefit from their defenses. Then sell everything except for the refineries and rebuild closer to your co-commander's base as well. You might be wondering why move a whole base for defense rather than just building our own defenses. Well, that's because of this damn thing here. This is a tech inhibitor, and while it's around, we're extremely limited in what we can build. Not only can we not make any defenses, but we can't even make a barracks, meaning until it's gone, we can't make any troops. We'll have to rely a lot on our co-commander for the start of this mission, and this is where the limitations of our control over them really start to become apparent. Obviously, we need to get them to destroy the tech jammer ASAP, but I don't know if it's just me, but the attack this command just doesn't work very well. They kind of end up just doing their own thing. Several times I would use an orbital dump to take out some of the power plants to deactivate the defenses, giving them the perfect chance to attack the jammer or heck, even just wipe out the rest of the power plants, but no, they insist on attacking the harmless, already powered down defenses, causing the power consumption to decrease, bringing the defenses back online and promptly destroying their force. This got seriously infuriating to deal with, and no matter what I did, Dasher wouldn't take out the jammer, so we're gonna need a new approach. I'd recommend making a save once you rebuild your base so you don't have to replay the start of the mission if things go south. Use the move here command to keep Dash's forces at the base as they build up. While she's building an army, we're just going to wait long enough until we have the commander points to purchase both Orbital Drop and its upgraded version, Orbital Dump. Once you've got the first Orbital Dump, you should use it on these generators here to knock out the island's defenses in case our co-commander decides to go send some troops to die to them. Once we have the Orbital Dump, order your co-commander's forces towards the island with the jammer to clear the fog of war, then drop the dump onto the jammer. It'll take 2 of these, so once it's recharged, do this again and we'll finally be able to actually participate in the mission. Build some Tesla coils around the place for base defense, then make both a barracks and a war factory, since we'll need some transports as well as some of these Sputnik things. These are kind of tanks, but they aren't actually used for combat. Rather, like the MCVs, they're used for base building, specifically expansion, and as such are allowed. Start pumping out flak troopers and enough bullfrogs to transport them, and once you're happy with your army, send a load of them up and launch them onto the 2 islands to start clearing them out. Once these areas are secured, build 2 Sputniks and unpack them on each island. This will complete the objective of setting up a base, but I wouldn't worry about actually building much on these islands, as trying to defend them is a tall task. Even just defending our main base is pretty hard. With that, we get 2 new objectives: destroy the allied base and capture the research facility. Build some more conscripts and flak troopers and load them up into the bullfrogs. Also train a group of engineers and load them up as well. We want to send them towards this island, but you'll have to micromanage their movements a little so that they don't get too close and annihilated by the defenses. Once in range, launch your forces onto the research facility. Hopefully at least one of your engineers got here alive so they can capture the facility. Now work your army around to take out the allied base, reinforcing them when necessary. Funds are probably going to be getting pretty thin at this point, so be prepared for production to slow down a lot. Once the base is destroyed, we're still not out of the woods, as the Allies are going to throw everything at the research facility to stop us getting their data. We have to hold it for 10 real-life minutes before the transfer can go down. As you can see, the force I have defending the facility is not the largest, and yeah, when the first Ally assault came 2 minutes in, they got completely obliterated. I started panicking, trying to work out a way to get the facility back, but as the timer ticked down, I realized nothing was actually happening. I sent a few troops to the facility, and when the fog of war cleared, they were definitely still holding it, and I could even see some engineers, but for whatever reason, they weren't taking it back. And surely enough, despite them having 8 whole minutes uninterrupted to take the facility, when the timer finished, the files were transferred and it was mission completed. I don't know if this was a glitch or if this whole countdown thing is just to build tension, but either way, I'm not complaining. Turns out the Premier survived the attempt on his life and is working to root out the traitor amongst us. While he works on that, we're being sent to finish off the Allies in Europe by taking out their airbase in Iceland. This is the mission I always dreaded as a kid, despite it starting off with us in a really good position. We have a frankly insane amount of funds to build a massive force. There are 2 keys to this mission, a lot of speed and a lot of luck. First, you'll want to build a barracks and start pumping out flak troopers, just as many as you can. You'll basically always want to be making new flak troopers in this mission so that you can always reinforce your army. We're also going to need some bullfrogs for transport, since this is another mission where we're separated from our enemies by a lot of water. Since the Allies use a lot of planes to attack our base, keep your bullfrogs to the back of the base when not doing transport so that they don't have too much of a sway on base defense. As for actual defenses, anti-air is a necessity, but as the mission goes on, you'll also want some Tesla coils. You should also build this new structure, the Iron Curtain. This thing can temporarily make tanks and structures completely invulnerable, but will instantly kill anything unarmored caught up in it. Once you have enough flak troopers, load up 4 bullfrogs and launch your troops around about here. While they're parachuting down, use an orbital drop to help clear out some of the anti-air units to help them land safely. Take out all immediate threats, and with whatever forces left, destroy the construction yard. Then move your forces down to destroy this tower and the garage. Around about when your forces are landing on the island, General Krukov will join the battle, and like the jerk he is, he'll take most of our remaining funds. Despite how rude he's been to us, I still kind of think we could be friends, so load up 4 bullfrogs and land some flak troopers over on his base. Time for a little friendly prank. Use the attack here command to friendly fire and destroy his barracks and war factory. He'll play along and try and rebuild them, but keep destroying them as he does. The next part of our silly little plan is to kill all of his forces. For the final step of our epic prank, destroy this Tesla coil. He's just gonna love this. Even Premier Chudenko contacts us to tell us how silly and fun our little prank is.
We have discovered the malignancy within, Commander. The traitor is General Krukov.
That fiend! From here on out, the General's forces will be hostile to us. Luckily, thanks to our little prank, the General has no real way to defend his base, and we already have some soldiers behind his lines to attack his critical infrastructure. You might ask why we don't just use friendly fire on his important buildings before his treachery is revealed, and yeah, good idea, but the devs thought of that too and made the buildings immune to damage until he becomes our enemy. On my successful run of this mission, I was actually a little slow getting rid of his troops, causing them to turn hostile on me and defeat most of my force. But my co-commander came in clutch with this Kirov airship, which sped up the process of getting rid of this treacherous scoundrel. Once he's defeated, all of the remaining forces will fall under our control. Honestly, most of his base is kind of useless to us, so I just sold off whatever I didn't need. I did however build 2 new prospectors for the refineries to increase my income. A new allied base will also appear after the general's death, as well as a new allied superweapon, the Proton Collider. Once again, load up as many troops as you can and launch them to where we took out the first allied base, then walk them over to the base that just appeared. There's a good chance that the allied commando, Tanya, will be here. She can absolutely destroy our infantry if given the chance, so if you see her, use an Iron Curtain to instantly kill her. Even with her gone, my forces were still wiped out by the base defenses, but my co-commander's same Kirov from before suddenly showed up again and saved the day by single-handedly wiping this base off the face of the map. This is what I mean when I say luck is a crucial part of this battle. I'd played this mission like 12 times, and every time my co-commander was completely useless, focusing entirely on a navy which they just send to die at sea. If it wasn't for them just randomly deciding to build and actually using this Kirov, then this would have just been another failed attempt. Next up is the super weapon. For how important this thing is, it's really poorly guarded. You know the drill by now, launch your troops onto the island and start taking out the super weapon. Then sacrifice a few soldiers to this defense here to bring the bullfrogs back in and load them up. Finally, launch your troops onto the island with the final base to take it out, and once it falls, we claim victory. Ah, you old horn dog you. With the general gone, we've been promoted, and for our first mission as general, we're being sent in to assassinate the emperor at Mount Fuji. Before the transmission ends, it's taken over by this mad scientist, raving about time travel and history being changed, but we don't have any time for that as the invasion of Mount Fuji begins, and yeah, well that could have went better. Our co-commander just has one warbear and we're left with a single conscript. I like to think that this is the same guy who survived back in the third mission. Dude's unkillable. This part is kind of like a stealth mission. We have to work these two around, waiting for guard patrols to pass and causing distractions to get them in and kill the Emperor. Once we do that, the Emperor actually contacts us, revealing that to have just been his double. It wasn't all for naught though, as the distraction let us slip an MCV behind enemy lines, as well as 2 Apocalypse tanks. These things are the best tanks in the game, but of course we can't use them, so for now, just move them to the back of your base. This is when the run starts to face some real issues. You see, pretty much instantly, before we even have a chance to start building our base, let alone any defenses, the Empire attacks our position. The only way we can defend ourselves right now is to get the magnetic satellite and use it to scoop up the enemies, but that doesn't really help much as another wave isn't far behind. Even if you can start getting some defenses up and repel this attack, they just keep coming, and all we can really do is slow the inevitable process of our base being destroyed. If you ask your co-commander to come help defend you, then they leave their own base completely undefended, and if it falls, things get a whole lot worse, as now the Empire will be just focusing on us. I tried this a few times and I just don't think it's possible, at least not on hard. Luckily this isn't any difficulty run, so I just restarted and bumped the game down to medium. I'll be honest, I really wanted to beat the game on hard and was really disappointed I had to do this. At least we got through most of the game before we had to lower the difficulty, I guess. With that, the Empire's attacks hit a lot less hard, giving us a chance to build up our defenses. You'll want a super reactor ASAP so you can start making Tesla coils, as they're your best bet at taking out the heavy armor that the Empire will be sending at us. You'll also want a good amount of anti-air and throw in some regular sentry cannons in case any infantry show up. While you're working on that, build a barracks and start making a massive army. As always, we'll want mostly flak troopers, but throw in about half as many conscripts and a few Tesla troopers as a treat. Get them to destroy those Apocalypse tanks from before, and once you're happy with the size of your force, start working them up to this position, taking out any base defenses on the way. Once the pass is clear, select your barracks and set it so that any newly trained troops will automatically start heading this way. This is where we want pretty much our entire army, so make sure that your base defenses are strong enough to repel any enemy attacks on their own. Now, we wait. Every now and then, a new Empire commando joins the battle, and we'll have to destroy their base as well. Eventually, one will try and set up shop here, but thanks to the massive army we already have here, we can easily crush him before he even gets a chance to get going. Not having to worry about this base takes a lot of pressure off. Continue amassing troops at the same ratio as before, and once happy, start sending them towards this base. On their way, you can have them take a few pot shots at the base in the middle to start softening it up as well. Once you get to your target, head in and start destroying everything you can. This base has a chance to set itself up, unlike the last, so it'll probably be able to repel your first attack, so you might need to send in another force to finish it off. Now, build up a final force, this time at your base, and once ready, move it into the last base. Just like with the last one, this one is well defended, but with enough bodies and an orbital dump, anything is possible. With that, the battlefield expands, and we get a new objective, to take out the Emperor's palace. Start to build up yet another force using the area from before as a rally point again. We also have 2 bonus objectives now, the most important of which is to destroy the Empire's power grid up in the northeast. My ally, for whatever reason, built a ridiculous navy despite barely any of this mission being on the water, so we might as well get some use out of it. Send them up the river to take out the Imperial Navy and clear the fog of war until we have view of these generators, then use an orbital dump to completely obliterate them. Now take a small crack team and move them over to the remaining generators. The path should be mostly clear, but stick with these guys just in case they meet any resistance. Get them up above these 3 generators and start taking them out, then move them in to clear the fog of war and use another orbital dump on these ones to complete the objective. This is a bonus objective, so you don't technically have to do it if you don't want to, but completing it will shut off the power to the Empire's defenses, making the march to the Emperor's palace a much more survivable journey for our army. The other bonus objective here is to free the units from the start of the mission. We don't really get anything for completing this one other than a free warbear and a conscript, but with the base defenses gone, it's super easy to go get them, and god damn it, I'm not leaving this soldier behind after all he's been through. I now just waited a while to build up a massive force, like probably a little too big. My PC is kind of a rinky-dinky piece of poop, and it's actually started to run noticeably slower every time I move this army around. This force shouldn't have any problem destroying the Imperial Palace. It might seem like a bit of overkill, and yeah it is, but I did have a reason for building up such a large army. Once we destroy the palace, the Emperor himself appears, decked out in a massive mech suit, not to fight us, but to try and run away. If he gets away, it's mission failed, and given how long it takes for us to build up a decent sized army and how slow infantry can move, we really have no choice but to annihilate him with the same force that destroyed the palace. With their emperor defeated, the rising sun is set, and what's left has seen the light of our glorious socialist revolution and joined our union. One enemy gone, one to go. The still heavily wounded allies now want to sign a peace agreement to end this whole war, and we've agreed. Of course, that's just a ploy to lure them in, and we've been tasked with being the bait. We have to build up a force to take out the allies before they arrive. Firstly, get some engineers out to grab the oil rigs for more income. As for our army, you know the drill. Flak troopers and conscripts, and maybe some Tesla troopers to spice things up. We're going to be rallying them around about here though, rather than keeping them at base. I also garrisoned the buildings around my base with flak troopers to help out with defense. As for the actual defenses, again we're going to be using a lot of Tesla coils and some anti-air flak cannons. Despite what you might think though, build these towards the north side of your base rather than towards the south where the allies are gathering. You'll also want to get the magnetic satellite ability and upgrade it to its second level once you have the commander points to do so. As the timer ticks down, more and more allied forces will start to build up, but don't start picking them off yet or our plan will be found out. When the emissary arrives, wait for the signal, and when given, use the magnetic satellite to scoop up as much of the forces that have gathered as you can, then let our co-commander handle the rest. Once defeated, the battlefield will expand and reveal that the allies expected us to stab them in the back and have prepared a counterattack. Again, I just let my co-commander take care of the allies while I continue to grow my army. Once the allied base falls, victory is claimed, and the Premier even calls us to offer his congratulations.
Thank you, Commander, for so thoroughly and brutally dispatching my enemies. But now I'm afraid you have outlived your usefulness.
You've got to be kidding me. Yep, the Premier has betrayed us. Turns out he faked the assassination attempt to frame Krukov, and now we're next on his hit list. Our first objective is to take out the Premier's superweapon, the vacuum imploder. This thing is capable of some serious damage, so we're going to want to get rid of it quick. Luckily, we already have a force amassed somewhat nearby. This is the first mission where playing with infantry only, or more accurately ground forces only, is kind of a benefit. The Premier's base defenses are almost entirely anti-air, meaning that they aren't really a threat to our soft, squishy soldiers. That doesn't mean that getting to the vacuum imploder is going to be easy though, as our forces will be fighting against the Premiers the whole way there, but with a large enough force you can push through and take out the super weapon before it can even think about firing. Our next objective is to destroy the Premier's literal volcano layer, and this is where lack of aircraft starts to become a bit of a problem. You see, despite the Premier's defenses being mainly anti-air, the game still expects us to have access to aircraft, and so they decided to make the top of the volcano unreachable to ground forces. If we order our troops to attack the base, they just walk into the mountain endlessly, and not even our bullfrogs can launch troops up there. We can use the orbital dump to damage the 3 parts of the base we need to destroy, but it takes 2 drops per part, and there's like a 4-minute cooldown between this, so it could take a while. Or you could just order your co-commander to attack it since they aren't currently doing a challenge run right now. Yeah, I didn't realize this until I'd wasted like 16 minutes or so trying to destroy the first 2 bases. Oopsie. Everyone is obviously shocked by the Premier's treachery, but we don't have any time to dwell on it. While the Allies have been completely pushed out of Europe, capitalism can't be truly defeated while the uncontested kings of it are still around. That's right, we're taking the fight to the Americans themselves to destroy the very symbol of their imperialist capitalist system, the Statue of Liberty. We first have to take out a base, and to do so we're given a small group of terror drones. These things are great at dealing with vehicles, being able to get inside them to destroy them from the inside. They aren't infantry though, so once again we're going to have to rely on our co-commander to get the job done. It was pretty tight, but with just 1 terror drone remaining they were able to defeat everything needed to move on to the next objective. We're now given a bunch more forces to take out what's left of the base. A bunch more aircraft and tanks, so again we're going to have to rely on our co-commander to do the work while my forces takes turns killing each other off. These 2 Kirovs alone were able to basically solo the base, but they were eventually felled along with most of my co-commander's forces. All that was left were these 2 Tesla tanks, which for whatever reason I really struggled to get Nikolai to use to take out the last objective. Eventually he did get his act together though, and we could move on. The battlefield now expands and we can start to build a base. You should know the drill at this point. Flak troopers, conscripts, Tesla coils, and anti-air. Instead of just gathering your army in one area though, I tried to spread them out throughout my base since the allies in this mission can use airdrops and straight up teleportation to attack our base from any angle. We also have access to the vacuum imploder now, and I'd really recommend speccing into this thing ASAP. We also get 2 new bonus objectives. The first to take out the enemy commando Tanya, which kind of just took care of itself. The other is to capture the stock exchange. This thing is over on the island we started on and is now being guarded by a small force of enemy armor. I just kept using the magnetic satellite on these till all that was left was 1 cryocopter. Then I loaded 2 engineers into a bullfrog and launched them over. Once they got close enough to the exchange, I split them up and sent them both to capture it. The cryocopter can't actually kill any of our troops, just freeze them in place, and it can only do this to 1 unit at a time, so once it takes its target, our engineer is free to take the building. Now onto the main target. I tried landing an army near the statue, but the allies have some pretty serious defenses here, which led to all of my forces being wiped out only seconds after they landed. I then tried to knock out the base's power with a combination of vacuum imploders and the 3rd tier orbital drop, the orbital downpour, which was pretty damn devastating, but it wasn't enough to power down the base's defenses, and the vacuum imploder has a 6-minute cooldown between uses, so whatever damage I had done would always just be repaired before I could benefit from it. There is still a pretty easy way to start damaging the statue though, without even getting an army there. You see, unlike the other abilities that require line of sight on an area to use, the vacuum imploder can shoot through the fog of war and actually clear it for a bit. Because of this, we can launch it at the statue whenever we want and follow it up with an orbital downpour for some extra damage. Thing is, the Statue of Liberty must be made out of, I don't know, metal or something, because this thing is super strong. Each of our attacks will do about a quarter of its health bar, and remember there's a 6-minute wait between uses, meaning at minimum it would take 24 minutes to destroy the statue like this. Plus, midway through the fight, the allies get access to their own super weapon, and obviously we can't have them using our own strategy against us, so we have to knock this thing out. It takes one vacuum imploder shot, plus an orbital downpour to destroy this thing, adding another 6 minutes of waiting. After doing this for a while, I realized I didn't want to win like this, it just kind of felt cheap. I started this thing with infantry, and I was going to finish it with infantry. So I loaded my army onto bullfrogs, found a poorly guarded area in the back right corner near the statue, and managed to land my forces there. I started wreaking havoc, and by the time the remaining allied forces realized what was going on, it was too late. The statue had fallen, and with it, all of our enemies. The statue is replaced with one of Lenin because socialism, I guess, and we get to take a well-earned break from military service to instead serve the people more directly as our new premier of the Soviet Union. So, can you beat Command and Conquer Red Alert 3 with infantry only? Hell yes you can! Damn, that feels good to say. I think this is the first run I've done that I can actually call a complete success. That's not to say that there aren't things I feel could have been done better though. I really did want to beat the whole game on hard, but I guess we did still get through most of it before lowering the difficulty, so I guess that's kind of a win. I can also see some people saying that this wasn't true infantry only since I allowed transports, prospectors and etc, but I think I did a good job keeping them from really swaying the battle too much. If you think that you can beat the game without any of those, why not give the run a go for yourself and let me know how it went in the comments. And while you're down there, why not consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed. As I mentioned, I definitely plan on doing the other 2 campaigns from this game eventually since I had a lot of fun with this one. So I guess until next time, I've been Katie Cat, and thank you for watching.